Good morning. It's Monday, the 8th of July, and this is Govindraj Ethiraj broadcasting and streaming from and headquartered in rain-swept Mumbai, India's financial capital. The take. So we have a date now for the Union Budget of India to be presented by the new government that has come in, which of course is the old government in most ways. The budget will be presented on July 23rd, and this is what you could call the final budget, as the interim budget was presented on February 1st, being the scheduled date. But then, as you know, general elections were upcoming. While the markets had, of course, priced in a return of the current government, it would be interesting to see whether the outcome of the elections, which is not the absolute majority the BJP, and for that matter, a lot of people in the markets were expecting, would change the tenor of the union budget. Translated, would there be more giveaways, or could it go in the opposite direction? For example, more taxes on the better-to-do people. Now, all of that depends on why the government thinks it lost, and that, of course, is a different story and discussion I'm extremely tempted to get into, but I will not. Now, there are many asks and wants ahead of any budget, as there have been all these years. The government has to balance its books, so if it gives away in the form of lower taxes or concessions elsewhere, it will also take away. The government clearly is not depending on windfall gains, or so it appears, like selling shares in state-owned or public sector units, though there cannot be a better time than right now, as we can see and feel, given how stock prices have shot up to valuations which even the most liberal of seasoned investors are having doubts about. I will pick on a few themes for today and keep coming back in subsequent days. Now, individual businesses may want specific issues addressed. They could range from, of course, taxes levied or tariffs imposed. For instance, the steel industry may argue for higher tariffs so as to keep out Chinese or Vietnamese steel, and those who consume steel as a raw material in their businesses may lobby for lower tariffs. Then there is the goods and services tax, a discussion on which can go into several hours, if not days. At a very broad level, businesses in India want two things, as I've found in repeated conversations, not just recently, but over the years. I will highlight these two for today before getting into some specifics in coming days. The first is simplicity of law. Yes, I know we've cracked the ease of doing business scores, but that's not the sentiment I hear when I talk to smaller businesses, or for that matter, larger ones. Yes, it is great that we can start a new company in a week or so, but it's of no great help if it gets more and more challenging as your business grows, including with compliances and state and central level norms that can wear you down. There is nothing to suggest that laws that govern the very basic existence of a firm in India have become simpler or easier to navigate. On the contrary, it's the opposite. My conversation with tax expert Girish Vanvari on the provisions of angel tax and how they've evolved later in the show will give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Angel tax comes into play when companies in India, particularly startups, pay tax for someone taking a stake in the company because they paid a premium for the shares, and that premium is treated as income. Now, this is a classic case that illustrates everything that's not working in the Indian tax system, and this is why. Angel tax was first introduced in 2012 by then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee to address money laundering. Now, you would think a new government, which came in 2014 and was besieged by pleas from the startup community amongst others in subsequent years to remove this tax, would do so. Quite the contrary. The tax and its administration has only become more and more complex. There are clamors once again, including from within the government. For instance, another ministry which administers certification for startups wants the finance ministry to drop the clause. I can assure you that it will be a miracle if that happens. The second theme is consistency. Indian laws are notorious for veering off course or going backwards or sideways. Tariffs themselves are an indicator. An Indian Express report, quoting economists Soumitra Chatterjee and Arvind Subramaniam, former chief economic advisor to the government, points out that since 2014, there have been some 3,200 tariff increases, with the largest happening in 2018. Now, these tariff increases have meant that the average tariff rate has risen to around 18%, which affects a sizable segment of India's trade basket, also making India's tariffs amongst the highest in the world. So if you are in any business that's been importing raw materials, then your cost of production has risen by that much, and you quite likely assumed 8 or 10 years ago that you were dealing with a stable import tariff regime, and you only had to bother more about prices globally rather than the landed cost. Now you have to think of both. On the other hand, India has struggled to replace API, or active pharmaceutical ingredients, or raw materials for manufacturing critical drugs. We import some 74% of our drug raw materials from China. Now, there are many other examples of areas where businesses want policy consistency and continuity, and like I said, I will come back in a few days. Meanwhile, I can only hope that tax laws will get simpler this time. Now, on to our top stories and themes this week. Markets take a well-deserved breather. The Sensex dips. The not-so-angelic angel tax. The importance of walk-in customers in auto dealerships. Real estate surges 50% in 5 years in Delhi and Mumbai. Can it sustain? And why Air France is projecting a revenue fall despite the Paris Olympics, where it will be ferrying or should be ferrying passengers to and from.
This is a Core Report with Govindraj Ethiraj.
A steady week in the stock markets. The NSE Nifty 50 hit another record closing high on Friday and also clocked its fifth straight week of gains, the longest such streak this year. The BSE Sensex also recorded a fifth consecutive week of gains. Having said that, the market settled in the negative zone on Friday, driven somewhat down by HDFC Bank, which of course had an unusually good run in the week before. Reliance Industries was the outlier on the positive side. This is on Friday. The BSE Sensex closed down at 79,997, which was down 53 points. The Nifty 50, however, was up 21 points at 24,324. The BSE MidCap and SmallCap indices hit record highs in trade, that's intraday trade, and closed higher. Then also angelic, angel tax. The angel tax was introduced in 2012 in the form of Section 56 to 7B of the Income Tax Act to plug money laundering practices. Now, the idea being that the government can crack down on funds paid to companies as a proxy to funds being paid to an individual who in turn obviously owns a substantial share of that company, but then might find it difficult to account for it. So when you pay a company, laws work differently. So the tax department is now going after companies, or actually has been for some time, it believes has received investments beyond what they are worth or the fair value. Now, the reason this is called angel tax is because the tax implication was mostly with angel investors, meaning ones who put their money behind startups. In the last few years, there have been several exemptions and overriding regulations and changes and shifts, all of which have made the law that was largely ignored for several years before extremely complex and another pain point for younger companies in this case. So the latest development is the Department of Promotion and Industry and Internal Trade, or DPIIT, has asked the Ministry of Finance to remove this tax. So since it's the DPIIT which sits under the Ministry of Commerce, to whom people go and cry. The DPIIT secretary confirmed to newspapers on Thursday that the department has called for the removal of angel tax following presumably representations made by the startup community. However, he quickly added that this was only an input from their side, and this input has gone out several times to the Ministry of Finance, who presumably has only ignored it. Hence, this has almost no bearing on whether it will go, except to note that some formal letters, or at least one hopes so, have moved within the government. I spoke with Girish Vanvari, founder of Transaction Square, a tax, regulatory and business advisory firm headquartered in Mumbai, and I began by asking him a slightly different question. How could the government address the issue of money laundering without resorting to the angel tax route? And then also what he was looking at from the union budget, since we are in the last mile now.
I would say angel taxes is a big area of concern for anybody raising capital. Even if the capital is raised from a holding company or even a group company or even from very known buyers, there is a big risk that when you raise money, there is a point of time where you have premium, it was going to be attacked for angel tax. It's a weird kind of a situation, the only situation wherein capital is attempted to be taxed as income. So I see anybody raising money is prone to a scrutiny these days, whether the money was rightfully raised. And I think it's happening both ways. It's happening at the company level, and also notices are going to the investors that please give us the source for money, which is leading to a lot of compliances and a lot of hardships, because when you go to the KYC of people, it goes right back to the fund, and people are a little wary about giving all the details because some of them don't even have the fund investor details. So it's a huge amount of compliance, huge amount of confusion, and wherever even there's an attempt to apply angel tax, valuation norms, though now the valuation methodologies are there, but the acceptability and the debates around it don't stop at all. So I think it's a big thing. It's one of the bigger things in the assessments of new companies, and it's a point of caution whoever raises money. So actually, I have seen people who are going out and not doing premium only. They are doing everything at par and bloating their capital, paying stamp duty so that the section only does not attract. And don't forget the point of attraction of taxes. Assume you raise money as CCPS today, Govind, and then tomorrow you convert it. What is the point of time at which it is applicable? Issue of CCPS, issue of equity shares pursuant to the CCPS, What happens to the old OCRPS or CCPS issued in the past? Will we have to test it for angel tax today when you convert into equity? All those are questions which are debatable both ways.
So, can you explain that? I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about convertible preference shares.
Absolutely. Take
So,
an example, Govind, that your company goes and raises money today, CCPS. So you will comply with the law today because you're raising equity, you're raising shares, CCPS. Angel tax is applicable to shares, whether it is CCPS or equity. You will comply with it. Then you'll have, parameters for conversion based on which you'll convert into the number of equity shares. It could be time linked, it could be performance linked, it could be EBITDA linked, it could be valuation linked, whatever it is. So at that point of conversion, then you'll issue shares based on that conversion formula. So should you apply the test for the angel tax today or at the time of conversion? Better view is it is today when you are issuing the main instrument, but these are not areas free from doubt. So that is where challenges are.
so now there are all kinds of exceptions, including if you're investing from overseas and from some countries overseas, and if you're investors in those countries. So is that all helping, or is it only complicating the problem?
It is like, say, take an example. They say you should invest from broad-based funds from countries. Now, in those country lists, Singapore, Mauritius, Netherlands are out. So really, it's UK, it's US, but lot of these funds investing into India are based out of Netherlands and Singapore with proper substance. So how do you look at that? Then second is sometimes funds don't directly invest. Funds form SPVs. SPVs may be in 2-3 countries. They may be leveraging, which they do. So how do you look at this broad-based 15 people also is a question mark. Ideally, if the fund is broad-based, even if you have SPVs in middle, it should be money coming from a broad-based fund, should not be liable to angel tax. But those are all interpretations, and really there are no case laws which say this or that, and let's see how it goes.
And I'm assuming there is no real precedence for this anywhere else in the world, where, as you said in the beginning, where you're actually paying tax on equity that you've raised, and or equity is being treated as income.
I think it has a purpose, and there is a money laundering purpose, which is a fair enough purpose. But to extend it to every capital raise is something which is tricky.
In your, let's say, thinking, Girish, what is it that could be done to, let's say, address the problem of money laundering, or at least, provide one solution to address the problem of money laundering, which perhaps then we can, let's say, dilute this angel tax, which is clearly making life difficult?
I would think the scrutiny should be at the time of the investors, like angel tax. Who is the angel here, the company or the person putting in the money? So if the government has doubt on the person who's putting in the money, on the source of money, they should attack the source rather than the recipient. But the recipients are normally companies which want to grow, and it's a big distraction for them. Whereas the investors do not do KYC properly. So maybe anybody who's investing, if they ask for more details than that on the source of investments, on from where the capital was raised, that may be a better compliance to be done rather than doing it at the company level where, it's blanket linked to valuations.
Right. Okay. So go after the person who's investing in that startup rather than, if you have to, because in currently the notice comes to the company mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, it is on the company because the tax is paid by the company, no? Angel tax is a provision. That is something which, see, if you have a doubt on somebody's sources of raising money, doubt on, like, say, a SEBI registered AIF, a SEBI registered FPCI, VCF, the fact that SEBI has proved it means they've done the KYC now over the people behind. So then just let them go. Any foreign fund which is broad based, let them go. Don't put this 90-day rule up and down. Think it's a little stretch, though it has its object, and people have misused it also in the past. So it's a tricky thing.
Okay. So the budget, we have a date now. That's 23rd of July. So any broad wish list asks from you?
I have a boring wish list, which is very unattractive to talk in media. And I have a wish list on the personal taxes. I think this time the personal taxes, the new versus old regime, they have to make it smooth. All the deductions are archived, like 50,000 rupees standard deduction done years ago, or medical deductions, housing loan deductions. It's time to relook at some of them, old versus new, and how these deductions pan out, because the middle class is something which is really suffering all this. So really personal tax reforms, not just the old versus new, but a lot of things which require relook is somewhere the focus would be. And second is a very boring this. I think it is time now to let the automation and all be very clear as to how it is executed and the compliance of the administration is smoother. See, otherwise, what is happening is the notices coming from automated systems and people get nervous, people get edgy, demands get raised. So how to get not the compliance has to make life easy and not to make life fearful. And sometimes you're traveling, sometimes people are out of India, they get it on their WhatsApp, they get it on their SMS, not reply, something happens. How do you make compliance more friendly and really focus on resolution of disputes and making the tax GDP rate go up with the compliances which we have? So I think that is one area which should be there. And there are two other points. This India Plus strategy should not be missed. So that 15% tax rate, PLI, whatever it takes to get manufacturing going should be done, along with services also, which is going to really go through a big transformation with AI. Take yours and my business with AI is going to change totally. And I think the non-trinkering of capital gains tax rate should be done, because that is one area where you do something, then all the capital raise plans of the government and the private sector will go for a toss. So there are 3, 4 things which we should watch out for and see how it goes.
Excellent. Girish, thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all. Wish you all the very best, Govind.
If you like what you are listening to and would like to collaborate with us at The Core Report, here's some good news. We are happy to announce the launch of the Core Brand Studio. Write into my colleague Shiva Chaudhary at shiva@thecore.in. I repeat, Shiva, that's SHIVA, at thecore, THECORE.in for more information. The importance of store walk-ins in auto sales. Now, passenger car sales are slipping after running pretty red hot for several months. Sales fell 6.7% year on year, while overall automotive sales were up less than 1%. That's over June last year. Tractors and commercial vehicles were worse. The Federation of Automobile Dealers Association says the slight growth in overall auto sales was driven by 2- and 3-wheelers, which saw on-year growths of about 5% each. Now, the interesting thing that emerges from this is that the association says a key reason for sales falling is that store walk-ins have reduced, particularly in the last 2 months, thanks, of course, to the heat waves and then heavy rains, which in turn led me to wonder how important or critical store walk-ins were as far as new vehicle purchases went. Very critical, evidently, as FADA President Manish Raj Singhania told me in our conversation, where I began by asking him, of course, why sales were slower in the last month.
I would still not say actually it's a dip actually. Please understand the situation, where it led to. We saw growth on a YOY basis in two-wheeler segment of by almost 4.66%. And in PV, definitely it dipped by 6.77%. And the market, overall automotive industry grew by 0.73% or something like that. So there was some very unique things that happened last month. First was the extensive heat wave. So during the heat wave, we realized what is the impact or toll of heat wave on the auto dealership. So we did a survey among some members and we could relate. We found out that two-wheeler dealers experienced a 13% drop and four-wheeler dealers experienced a 15% drop in walk-in inquiries. And you very well understand the walk-in inquiries at the highest conversion. So there was a definite dip there because of heat wave. Secondly, we had this, kind of a stalled monsoon. It started very well on time, but after Maharashtra, it kind of vanished. And overall, in the month of June, we had an 11% shortfall across India. So what was supposed to be a normal month, it became a shortfall month. And the sowing of crops also got delayed because of the lack of rains in the month of June. The rural sentiment, it got hampered, it got hindered. So that was another thing. And thirdly, the elections, we had a huge election period. A lot of people get involved into the election activities and all that. And a lot of policing is there. And all these three primary factors delayed the purchase of the vehicle by the customer. And also this resulted in lower base of inquiries at the dealership.
Just to separate the two things, you're saying that people did not come to dealerships because of weather conditions, that's heat waves and then maybe heavy rains. But are you also saying that they didn't come because of heat waves and extreme weather conditions? Their Incomes were affected because of agriculture?
No, incomes are not affected because sowing season will start now. The kharif crops would be sowed now with the advent of monsoon. So there is no dip. In fact, there is a positivity here. The central government has increased the MSP of all kharif crops, and there would be an additional flow in the rural market to the tune of 35,000 crore. That's what government has quoted, and that would be very critical. And plus the Manrega, since the stable government is in place, I am very confident there would be increase in Manrega budgets also during the budget.
Yeah. So a question more on sentiment. So you're saying if people, let's say your walk-ins were down 13% for two-wheelers, 14% for four-wheelers, do people then not come back at all? Because from that logic, July should see a big jump up. Or are you seeing that?
So normally what happens in a sale business, it is a lot of, driven by that instant purchase, whenever they are planning, they need to buy the vehicle. And say during festival times also, if a customer buys during the festival time, then it's a kill. Otherwise, if he or she postpones the buy, then it gets indefinitely postponed. You never know when that customer will again get excited about or owning or buying a product.
But that applies for cars as well. You're saying cars too, people buy so intuitively?
Yeah, definitely. And whenever a deal gets postponed, it's very difficult to revive that deal. It's always a tough task.
Okay. In a percentage sense, how many people, let's say 100 people walk into your showroom every month. How many people do you think are the kind who would have, said, okay, I'm going to buy this regardless, if not today, then tomorrow. But others who, would if eventually, effectively postpone the decision because either the dealership was closed or it's too hot or something else prevented them from coming.
See, why we kind of very closely at dealership community monitor the walk-in very closely, because the conversion rate of walk-in is almost to the tune of 40-45%. And that too to a particular dealership. That same customer would be walking in at the 3 or 4 different dealership. And finally, if you look at that particular customer's walk-in, a conversion, that would be close to 70-80%. A customer buys your product or some other product in the market, or he invests or she invests in a FMCG or whatever other related item. But there is a buyer in the market who is coming on his own to a particular sales point to inquire about the product. So we have a higher focus on walk-ins, and rest of the time you're only approaching the prospective buyers, trying to filter out which is hot, warm, cold. But a walk-in customer is always a hot customer. He or she has an inclination of buying your product, and how well you convert that customer to your product, it all depends on your sales skill and the kind of product that's available at the dealership.
And walk-ins constitute roughly how much of total sales for a, let's say, large dealership?
So it depends. See, if a large volume OEMs like, top 5 OEMs, the walk-ins would be much higher at the dealership, and the low volume OEMs, the walk-ins would be much lower. So it depends on the product profile. If there is a new launch in a particular brand, obviously the walk-in goes up for that particular brand. Just now, say the latest model launched is Mahindra 3XO. Obviously, we'll be seeing a higher walk-in. When I personally analyze my data, there was a 15% drop across car dealership. As a Mahindra dealer, just because of 3XO, I had a 80%, increment in walk-ins just because of that new product. So it depends on the situation. Walk-in is one customer that every dealership monitors very carefully.
Got it. Last question in two parts. One is there are dealerships which are offering discounts in some cases. So what does that reflect? Secondly, how are inventory levels right now?
See, both the questions are related actually, and the answer would be, common to them. It's whenever a dealership has a higher inventory, and normal cycle of a dealership is say 60 days at any cost. A dealer needs to clear the stock within 60 days, or otherwise that dealership starts losing money on that particular model. So, as we quoted in our press release, the bid up stock in PV has reached now 60 to 67 days. That if you account it in numbers, that's close to 6 to 6.5 lakh vehicles, which is available ex stock at the dealership. So more or less now everything is available ex stock, except few models or few variants that are commanding some waiting periods, but everything is available at the dealership. So whenever a stock is there or excess stock is there is normally a scheme from the OEM in the market for the consumer. and a dealer is under pressure to rotate that stock, the dealer definitely offers some additional discount depending on the aging of the vehicle to enable liquidation of that particular variant. So higher stock is always good for the customer. I think higher stock always leads to higher scheme from the dealership end and better realization at the consumer end. So though June monsoons were not very up to the mark, but if you see the first week of July, the monsoon has covered the entire country ahead of schedule now. So that's a good sign now, and we are above average. And as we know that government has increased the Kharif MSP, all this will lead to additional inflow of almost 35,000 crore in rural market. And plus, we have not normal supplies at the dealership. In fact, we are excess supply at the dealership, and a lot of new product launches are planned for the coming months. So all this and plus the discounts would be there looking at these top levels. So all this will definitely excite the market. The only thing which makes us cautiously optimistic was that IMD predicted a monsoon of 106%, which is above normal. So that normally in India, that leads to a lot of flooding. And the flooding can dampen the market spirit and the retail industry. So that's the only negative. That's why we are being cautiously optimistic. Or else everything is in place. And I think if we have a good harvest season and monsoon is evenly spread across the length and breadth of India, we'll definitely see a good revival of rural market.
Right, Manish, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
It's a 50% jump. India's National Capital Region and Mumbai Metropolitan Region have seen record-breaking sales, leading to average residential prices go up by about 49% in the last 5 years, also leading to unsold inventory coming down, a note from real estate consulting firm Anurok Research has said. Latest Anurok Research data says NCR, that's the National Capital Region around New Delhi, recorded a 49% or 5-yearly jump in average residential prices between the first half of 2019 and the first half of 2024. So average rates then, that's 5 years ago, were about 4,500 per square feet. It's now about 6,800 per square feet. That's in the National Capital Region around Delhi. While in Mumbai, average residential prices were also up about 48% in the period, similar to Delhi, from about 10,600 rupees per square feet in the first half of 2019 to about 15,600 per square feet in the first half of 2024. Now, this is something, at least in percentage terms, you would know or would have felt if you've been scouring the market in the last few years. The question, of course, is will it keep rising? So my sense from conversation is that only in very few pockets for possibly ultra-premium properties. Elsewhere, prices are holding steady, at least for buying, from what I can see, particularly in Mumbai. Now, rents, however, have shot up sharply in the last 2 years across the country, actually, following a COVID-19 dip as landlords have obviously tried to make up for what they lost in that period. Those that let out their houses, obviously, more than 11 million homes in India are lying vacant, as we've discussed in the core report earlier. Travelers avoid KLM Air France. It's the most unusual, if not bizarre, aviation airline story of the year, if not longer, at least for me. Air France KLM has warned of a revenue shortfall at its French operations this summer because passengers are avoiding Paris to skirt possible disruptions and high prices during the Olympic Games, Bloomberg is reporting. So you would think an Olympic Games could cause traffic to jump and people arrive in droves at any cost. Maybe they are and will, but not by Air France, evidently. French residents are apparently postponing holidays until after the Olympics, while international customers are staying away, the company said. Airlines, of course, poured capacity, as Bloomberg says, into Paris in the run-up to the Games, with Air France, Transavia and Ryanair Holdings leading the charge. Air France says things will return to normal, which is travel to and from France, but that will be only after the Olympics. So it's seeing encouraging demand, but for the end of August and for September, and will not pull back on its schedule for now. So while it's typical for corporate travelers to avoid a host city, note that during the Olympics, Air France KLM's warning was more surprising on an aggregate, a research analyst said in a note quoted by Bloomberg. That was the core report with me, Govindraj Ethiraj. Do stay connected with more of our coverage at the core. You can check out our website or sign up to our newsletter for our exclusive stories, one in-depth feature a day on www.thecore.in. Do also track us on LinkedIn, where we usually post synopses or extracts of our top stories and interviews. We would love your feedback on how we can make business more interesting and relevant, including, of course, India's vibrant manufacturing sector. So write to us at feedback@thecore.in, and thank you once again for listening.